Hey guys, tonight we're going to wander into a very peculiar corner of history. The hidden, often misunderstood, and sometimes absurd world of Roman prostitution. From waking up in a cellar that smells of wine and straw, to parading in short, colourful togas, to the graffiti of Pompeii that reads like an ancient Yelp review, this is a story carved not in marble, but in survival. This is not the tale of emperors or victories. It is the quiet, slow story of cramped rooms, cheap perfume, whispered prayers to Venus, and names etched on walls that somehow outlasted the voices of senators. Told in this sleepy way, it is boring history for sleep. A calm journey from the sleepy historian on historian Sleepy 365. Here to help you drift off while still learning something unusual. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Historian Sleepy 365 so you'll never miss another slow, quiet walk through the forgotten past. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now, so dim the lights, slow your breathing, and let's step gently into the world of those who lived in the shadows of Rome. You wake, or rather, are pulled back to the surface of consciousness, not by birdsong or sunlight slipping through a window. There are no windows here. The first thing you notice is the smell. A strange blend of rotting straw, spilled wine seeping from a cracked jug, and the lingering scent of unwashed skin from the night before. It creeps into your nose like a bittersweet reminder that yes, you are still in Rome. And Rome never smells like the marble statues in the squares. Your room isn't really a room. It's more like a pocket carved into the earth, just wide enough to stretch out without knocking your knees against the walls. But if you roll too far, your elbow will strike the cold stone. The ceiling is low enough that if you forget to crouch when you sit up, the bump on your head becomes a long-term companion. They call this place a cellar. To you it's home, and office, and gallery for the quiet disappointments of your life. Your mattress, if you can call it that, is just a sack stuffed with straw that's already broken down into dry, splintering threads. It probably served others before it reached you. The straw has absorbed spilled wine, sweat, and the faint, indistinct stains of blood from uncertain origins. Last night, you slept on it, or tried to, curled up like a wet cat. The fleas nesting in the straw know you well by now. To them, you're just another part of the bed. Sometimes you wonder who really owns this place, you or them. In the corner, a faint oil lamp flickers, if it hasn't been stolen. Many mornings you open your eyes only to find yourself in total darkness, meaning the lamp has gone visiting at someone else's house. No one minds. Oil lamps here have shorter lives than hope. When they're still around, they cast a weak yellow light, flickering against the wall like a wavering ghost. Just enough to see how cramped this space is, never enough to forget it. Sounds begin to filter in, reminding you that Rome wakes earlier than you do. The clatter of cartwheels over cobblestones. The sharp voice of a tavern matron shouting orders at servants setting tables out on the street. Further off, the splash of water at the public fountain, where housewives crowd in to fill their jugs before the midday sun arrives. It all echoes down into your cellar like through a heavy curtain. The world outside is never silent, not even when you crave peace enough to sleep a little longer. You try to stretch your legs, your muscles ache, not from exercise, but because last night's client was too rough. Your hand fumbles across the floor, searching for a stray sandal. Possibly yours, possibly not. Nothing in this room ever fully belongs to you. The wooden comb, the cheap powder box, the dented bronze mirror, all scattered around, part tool, part testament to a life that never stays in order. A thought flashes through your mind. I should get up. But your body groans in protest. The damp air weighs on your chest like a stone someone left behind. You lie still a little longer, eyes following a crack in the wall that runs like a map of a world too small to matter. Beyond the wall, a dry cough breaks the silence, your co-worker shifting on her own pile of straw. You can't see each other, but there's a tired closeness in that sound. A strange kind of bond, a community in the dark, each person a faint shadow of herself. You sit up. Your head swims. Your stomach churns. Not from hunger, but from last night's wine, cut with dirty water. You let out a quiet laugh. Rome, the city of empire, of emperors, of towering monuments. And yet here, in its shadow, you wake in a dark room with an aching back and a gut full of regret. Your foot touches the wooden bucket in the corner, the one that holds everything you'd rather forget. Urine, spilled wine, the smell of unsuccessful nights. You wrinkle your nose, then think, at least it saves you a trip outside. In Rome, sometimes the greatest luxury is simply a place to work quietly in the dark. You reach for the bronze mirror. It's not flat. Your reflection warps in it, as though even your face refuses the truth. Dark circles under your eyes, last night's makeup clinging to your skin. Dry, cracked lips. Still you try to smile, a half-curve you'll wear all day. Not for joy, for survival. In this moment, before the light slips in through the cellar door, before Rome becomes more than just a noise outside, you know clearly, you are no goddess Venus. You are not Lady Livia. You are simply a woman, a name no record will keep, beginning another day in the cycle of darkness and labor. And like every day, you sigh, pull a thin cloth over your shoulders, and get ready to step out. Above you, Rome is waking. And in the cellar, so are you. The air outside isn't exactly fresh, but at least there's a trace of early breeze weaving through it, carrying the scent of ash, of newly baked bread, and the ever-present stench of sewage. In Rome, everything blends. The greatness of empire walks hand in hand with the staleness of a million living bodies. The cobbled street beneath your feet is still damp. Perhaps someone upstairs tossed a bucket of wastewater down again. You walk quickly, avoiding the shallow puddles that reflect the first light of dawn. Whether barefoot or in thin wooden sandals, you can't really tell trash from pebble. Here, feet always learn how to endure. Your first stop of the day, the public fountain. Part water source, part gossip post, part stage for wandering eyes. Water trickles from a lead pipe. A gift, they say, from the mighty aqueducts, but you know what else it carries. Dust, strange metallic taste. Still, it's the only thing you have. You bend down, splash water on your face. The initial sting of cold sharpens your senses, but it's quickly replaced by the eyes. A housewife nearby, clay jug in hand, scans you from head to toe. Too long. A gaze meant to pin you in place. No words are spoken, but you understand perfectly. You are no matron, no man's lawful wife, just that kind of woman. You don't react. In Rome, silence is the thinnest armor you can wear. A young man arrives, rinsing his hands half-heartedly. He whistles, half mocking, half claiming, "Venus up this early?" You offer a faint smile. Say nothing. His words are both a joke and a marker. A declaration that he has the right to see you as merchandise, right here in the open air. After washing, you pull out a bit of natron, that gritty, powdery mineral salt. It scrapes the skin raw. They say it cleans. Mostly, it burns. You scrub your face, your neck, your underarms. It hurts, but it strips away the grease and scent of a long night. A woman passing by chuckles quietly. You don't know if it's mockery or pity. You bend down, swish a mouthful of watered-down wine left in a small flask. Not for luxury, just a stronger weapon than water against the filth. Or so you choose to believe. The sharp burn crawls down your throat, leaving behind a sourness that's familiar. If today's work pays well, maybe you'll treat yourself to a visit to the public baths, the thermae. It's more than cleansing, it's a school of gazes. Everyone is there, legionnaires, merchants, philosophers, old women, children. Privacy is not a concept. Clothes are removed, bodies are exposed. You step in like stepping onto a stage where every floor might become someone's amusement. The first room is the apoditarium, the changing room. You remove your thin wrap, tuck it into a wall nook along with your cheap jewelry. A boy guards the space, his eyes sharp with secrets. You don't trust him, but you have no choice. Next is the tepidarium, the warm room. The air is thick, sweat and olive oil coat every surface. People rub oil onto their skin, then scrape it off with a strigil, a curved metal blade. You do the same. Oil slicks your palms, the strigil rasps across your skin, dragging away sweat, dust, and yesterday's grease. The scraping sound is rhythmic, half discomfort, half release. Nearby, a bald philosopher is preaching ethics and restraint. You almost laugh, a naked man, slick with oil, lecturing on purity. Rome never lacks its ironies. You move on to the caldarium, the hot room. Steam thickens the air, stings your nose. Sweat bursts from every pore, mingling with herbs and the breath of dozens. Your body feels lighter, as if purged. But exhaustion creeps in quickly. In this heat, everyone is the same, patrician or brothel girl, all turned to steaming flesh. Finally, the frigidarium, the cold room. You lower yourself into the clear basin. The shock slams into your chest, your heart jolts, goosebumps rise, breath shortens, but surfacing for a flicker of a moment you feel clean, as if reborn, even though you know an hour outside and the smell of drains and sweat will cling again. Leaving the thermae, you reclaim your clothes, check your jewelry, cheap as it is, piece by piece. Eyes still follow you, some curious, some contemptuous. You wrap yourself in a false smile, your last remaining armor. On your way back to the cellar, the smell of toasted bread drifts from the communal oven. Metal strikes metal from the blacksmith's corner. Rome is busy with another day, and you've completed the morning ritual of survival. Washing, scraping, enduring the eyes, and convincing yourself this body can perform one more day. You leave the thermae, your body still warm from the hot room, still shivering slightly from the plunge into the cold basin. The sweat and grime have been temporarily washed away, leaving behind skin slick with olive oil and natron. It isn't a divine purity, it's more like a blank slate waiting to be written on again. And writing, in this case, begins the moment you put on the uniform society has assigned to you. Back in the familiar cellar, you set your clay jug down in the corner and wipe your hands on an old scrap of cloth. A shaft of light cuts through the doorway, illuminating the clutter spread across a wobbly wooden table, a few tarnished bronze trinkets, a cracked jar of white powder, and a coiled blonde wig, curled like a hibernating animal. This is your treasure, and also your brand, the markings that tell the world exactly which class you belong to. A respectable Roman woman, a matrona, is allowed to wear the stola, long, modest, finely woven, covering the body in soft folds that declare she belongs to a lawful man. But you? The law requires you to wear the toga, a garment originally meant for men. An intentional reversal to make it obvious that you are no wife, no mother, no member of a respectable family. You lift the cloth. It's dyed in loud colors, red, pale purple, sometimes tinged with blue. Not for luxury. but because those dyes are cheap and quick to fade. The fabric is rough, stiff, nothing like the soft wool of the patricians. When wrapped around you, it doesn't conceal. It reveals, like a living advertisement. As you drape the toga across your shoulders, you feel its weight and its looseness. Excess cloth drags along the filthy floor. You pin it in place with a fibula, a small bronze brooch, careful not to slip. One wrong move and it could fall in the middle of the street. But that, too, is by design. Society wants you easily exposed. You open the wooden box, inside a few thin bronze bracelets already green with tarnish, a fake gold chain, a pair of oversized earrings. You know they're worthless. Sometimes they even itch or leave green smudges on your skin. But in dim light, the gleam is enough. Enough to catch the eye of a drunken customer. You put each piece on one by one, listening to the soft clink, like delicate chains. A mocking thought crosses your mind. Maybe the only difference between jewelry and shackles is who holds the key. The most important item, the blonde wig. In Roman culture, blonde hair marks a foreign woman, especially slaves from Gaul or Germania. The law requires you to wear it like a walking signboard that reads, "I'm a prostitute, not a lawful wife." You place the wig on your head. It's dry, musty, it smells of wool and sweat. As you comb it with a wooden brush, a few strands fall, catching on your necklace. The warped bronze mirror reflects a tired face beneath a false crown of golden hair. For a brief moment, you're not sure who you are, the woman in the glass, or the identity the world has forced onto you. You sit. Hold the mirror closer. The small scar on your chin. The darkness under your eyes. The crease forming at the corner of your mouth. All of it appears. But you know it must be hidden, or at least softened, with a strained half-smile. A smile that invites without opening. That has become a survival skill. You dust white powder onto your cheeks, smooth on a faint layer of red made from ochre mixed with fat. The scent of minerals and animal grease lingers in the air. Your skin stings, itches. But in the mirror, your face becomes more acceptable, enough to pass for a poor man's Venus. You recall the stares from the fountain this morning. The matron's gaze, disgust. The young man's, eager. Both built entirely on the uniform you wore. They didn't need your name. Your short toga and your wig told them everything they thought they needed to know. While noble women dress to conceal, you dress to be exposed. They use clothing to protect their honor. You use it to publicly forfeit yours. Clothing, which should be a choice, has become a sentence. In Greece, a hetaira might wear silks, sit at a symposium, trade philosophies with men. In China, courtesans sometimes joined poetry salons, wrote verse. But here in Rome, you wear a short toga and stand outside a brothel, a living billboard. Your only writing is the name you scratch into the wall with charcoal or a knife. Fashion in Rome is not just about beauty, it is the political language of the body. It dictates who you are, what you're allowed to do, and what you must never hope for. You adjust the fibula one last time. Inhale. The fabric scratches your skin. The bangles feel heavy. The wig itches. Your entire body protests, but you know this is your uniform. Before stepping outside, you sit at the wobbly wooden table, its surface stained with old oil and scattered powder from days past. There, your few belongings lie where they fell, a warped bronze mirror, a cracked jar of white pigment, a thick jar of scented oil, and a few stubs of lipstick made from ochre mixed with animal fat. Together these make up your only arsenal, not for protection, but for disguise. When you lift the mirror, the flickering reflection gives you a fleeting sense of distance, as if you're staring at a stranger. Shadowed eyes, tired skin, a mess of blonde, tangled wig. All of it feels like temporary layers. But Rome doesn't care who you really are. Rome only cares about the mask you wear, the one that determines how and whether you'll survive today. You begin with the white powder. Dabbing your fingertip into the jar, you smear the fine, mineral-heavy dust across your cheeks. It scrapes, it dries. It leaves behind a pale cast, not luminous, but chalky, like worn marble. It hides freckles, covers the irritation left by this morning's natron. But it also replaces your face with something false, a blurry version of yourself, as though your life has been scrubbed of wrinkles and replaced with something glazed and vacant. In the mirror, you catch a glimpse of a cheap Venus statue, something shoved into the corner of a dusty market stall, on display, but not admired. Next, the lips. You open a small tin. The stench of animal grease rises, mixed with the harsh mineral bite of ochre. You press color onto your mouth with a finger, dragging it into a curved line. Now they look brighter, livelier, but the salty tang of sweat mingles with the paint, forming a bitter taste. When you press your lips together, the pigment cracks slightly, like a fake smile with fractures showing through. You test the smile. The bronze mirror reflects a curve that's both inviting and uneasy. You uncap the jar of perfume oil. Its sharp scent floods the cellar at once, thick, pungent, made from resin and herbs, sold in cheap clay pots at the market. You pour a few drops into your palm, rub it onto your neck, your wrists, the back of your neck. The scent is so strong it drowns out the smell of straw and damp stone, but it's loud, like someone shouting in a room that begged for quiet. You inhale, the sting hits your nose, but you know it'll cling to your skin all day, announcing to anyone who comes close, this body is ready to be purchased. Whispers begin to stir from other corners of the cellar. Your co-workers, women like you, are also preparing for the day's labor. One combs her wig with a wooden brush, the bristles rasping through dry fibers. Another tries on oversized bronze earrings, laughing and wincing as they tug on her sore ears. Their voices are low but clear, half joking, half serious. Did your guy pay in full last night? Don't forget more powder. There's a batch of new soldiers in town. These words float, mixing with sighs, forming a harmony both tense and familiar. You remain silent. The whispers are part kinship, part rivalry. Their eyes carry recognition, but also calculation. Everyone knows there are only so many customers in a day. Everyone must compete to survive. No one's really a friend. But no one's quite an enemy either. It's a fragile kind of alliance, where every smile exchanged might mean hello or a warning. You return to the mirror, line your eyes with charcoal mixed in oil. Your fingertip traces a black smudge along the lash line, just enough to deepen, to widen. In the mirror, those eyes look back at you, questioning. What will be different today? You don't answer. Instead, you dab more powder at the corners of your eyes, trying to look more awake. The warped mirror, combined with makeup, turns your face into a portrait that's only half real, half mask. The cellar air is thick with scent, oil, pigment, flesh. Footsteps drag across the stone floor behind you. Someone else has entered. A quick glance, a small nod. No words needed. Everyone here is performing the same ritual, putting on the face that Rome wants to see. You try your smile again. It's no longer stiff, but not quite natural. It's a rehearsed expression, trained, ready. A smile that calms clients, softens insults, holds back the exhaustion brewing in your chest. It's like a small knife tucked in a sleeve, and not sharp enough to kill, but sharp enough to defend you in fragile moments. Outside, Rome grows louder, the grind of wheels on stone, the bark of vendors, the growl of dogs. Inside, the pace quickens. One woman rises, adjusts her toga, fixes her wig, heads for the door. Another digs through cloth for her fibula. You know your turn is coming. You take a deep breath. The perfume stings your lungs. But that's the sign. The ritual is complete. The makeup is on. The oil has been rubbed in. The smile is in place. You're no longer the tired woman who woke in the dark. You are the figure Rome expects, a pale face, cracked red lips, golden wig, overwhelming scent, and a smile that doesn't speak. You rise, legs trembling slightly but steps firm. This cramped cellar will still carry the trace of your oil, your powder, your quiet dread. But outside, the streets of Rome are waiting. You open the door, and light floods in. In that instant, your smile locks into place like a mask stepping onto a stage. You walk forward. Behind you, the whispers of your co-workers echo, merging with the street's rising noise. And inside you, a question floats past. What will today bring besides more weariness? But the smile doesn't let you answer. It simply exists, steadily like old paint on a statue, making others believe it was always your real face. And so another day begins in Rome, with you in your familiar role, a painted face, a borrowed smile, and a soul that hides behind the makeup just long enough to endure. You stand at the threshold, where the damp darkness of the cellar ends and the outside world begins. Morning light pours in, sharp enough to make your eyes blink again and again. The air beyond isn't fresh, not really, but it's different from the thick perfume and musty straw inside. A breeze moves through, carrying with it the scent of toasted bread from the public oven, the clink of the blacksmith's hammer, and the sour waft of sewage rising from the gutters along the street. Rome wakes not with order, but with a clamour, a symphony of smells and sounds, layered and chaotic, with no one bothering to arrange them. You tug your short toga into place, adjust your blonde wig, and take a deep breath. Your body has become a palette, white powder, red lips, black-lined eyes, thick perfume. All of it layered until you become the right image for the job. Before you, the narrow street leads toward the crowded square. The paving stones are wet, catching the morning light in dull reflections. Horse hooves echo against the walls. Vendors shout into the rising hum of the city. And you, one of dozens, maybe hundreds of women, begin your morning by standing in the doorway of the brothel, turning your body into an invitation. Here you need no signboard. You are the advertisement. The short toga, the gaudy dyes, the wig, they are the social signals. Anyone passing by knows exactly who you are and what you do. There's no need for introductions, no calling cards. The law has already dressed you in a uniform, one that declares without subtlety, I am a brothel woman. This is my work. People pass. Their eyes pass with them. Some glance without interest as if you were a piece of Rome's furniture. Others linger, stripping you bare without touching. Then there are the furtive looks, curious, shy, from boys too young or too unsure to speak. Each gaze leaves something behind, not a bruise, just a scratch you can't see. You're used to it. But used to isn't the same as comfortable. The first man approaches, still smells of last night's wine. You speak. Looking for a little warmth this morning, traveller? The words come easily, like muscle memory. There's no emotion in them, just utility. Your voice is softer than usual, the smile on your lips just the right amount of curve. He scoffs, shakes his head, and walks on. No matter, this work is a dice roll. Some you catch, some you lose. Your co-workers call out too, each with their own approach. One smiles sweetly. Another shouts a vulgar tease, laughter, voices, the occasional curse when ignored. This is the morning chorus of the brothel street, not violent competition, but always edged with tension, each woman pushing for a sliver of attention from the tide of men passing by. Your hand rests lightly against the brothel wall, its stone surface carved with old, clumsy graffiti from Pompeii days. Atimatus screwed here with success. Maritimus knows how to please. Fortunata charges 2 asses. Advertisements, reviews. Reputations scratched in charcoal or etched with knives. No scrolls, no parchment, just a few crooked letters turning someone's body into something to be evaluated publicly. You run your fingers over one of the names and think, maybe one day yours will be here too. A fragile trace, but more permanent than a memory. You smile, faintly, a smile that invites, but with bitterness curled at the edges. Rome has its grand forums, where senators thunder speeches to gathered crowds. And you have this wall, your forum, where your legacy is written in smudged lines, sometimes praise, sometimes mockery. And strangely, this is where you truly exist in history. You look up as a group of legionnaires passes, young, sun-bronzed, muscular. You and the others call out in unison, voices a little more cheerful, practiced. A few of the soldiers glance back, grin, jeer, and move on. You know some will return later, but for now they must keep their posture, their respectability. This performance of decency is also part of the game. The girl beside you leans in and whispers, "Busy day ahead." A new merchant caravan came in last night. You nod, say nothing. You know what a busy day means, a body more worn by nightfall, but maybe a fuller meal by evening. Hope, even small, quiet hope, mixes with the thick, morning tension. You wait, and your thoughts wander. You think of women in other cultures. If you were a hetera in Athens, you might be reclining at a symposium, sipping wine, talking philosophy with men, selling not just your body, but your mind. If you lived in Han China, perhaps you'd be a courtesan in a wine house, reciting poetry, plucking strings, offering both art and intimacy. If you were a geisha in Japan, you'd wear a silk kimono, light paper lanterns, use your voice and your grace to entertain, without needing to sell anything more. But here in Rome, you have a short toga, a fake blonde wig, and a graffiti-covered wall. No symposium, no zither, no tea ritual, just bare hands, a painted body, a smile applied like powder. And in that comparison you realize Rome is not always the civilization it pretends to be. A passing thought, your body is a signboard. Each glance, each joke, each carved word etches itself into you. You don't fully own it, society does, and yet you turn it into a tool, a way to survive. And in that paradox you find a quiet truth. In every culture, humans find ways to turn themselves into signals for others to read. Rome has its short toga, Athens has its symposium, China has its songs, Japan has its kimono, but all of it is the same. The body and the image become languages of existence. You sigh, look up at the pale sky. Another day has begun, and you are still here, standing in the brothel doorway, smiling at strangers. But beneath the smile, a quieter thought lingers. One day, these graffiti lines will fade, but the memory of women like you will remain in some other form. No one may sculpt a statue in your honor. No one may write your biography. But each glance, each word, each whisper shared this morning, they form a collective record. And in that record, you live. Rome may not care who you are, but memory does. It keeps your shadow, alongside the hetera, the Chinese courtesan, the Japanese geisha. No ranks, no judgments, just the truth that each was human. Each used body, smile, and endurance to make it through. You offer your next invitation, The crowd keeps moving, Rome remains loud, and the day truly begins. And so a morning in Rome closes, beneath watchful eyes, behind a forced smile, and among graffiti hastily scratched into the walls. Your life is defined by a short toga, pungent perfume, and words meant to lure. But Rome is not only the world of women standing outside the brothel door. At the same hour your voice reaches into the street in marble palaces, other women are also rising. They drape themselves in soft silk, crown their heads with gold, and step into a game of power, where the body and desire are weapons just the same. From the shadows of the brothel to the dazzling light of the palace, Rome turns on the same axis, hypocrisy, and the double edge of politics, where one woman is branded disgrace and another held up as ideal. And that too is the story of Livia, of Messalina, and of the names never written in gold, yet still haunting history. While you stand in the doorway of the brothel, your false smile frozen in place somewhere else in the city of Rome, another woman is beginning her morning too, but her room is no damp, shadowed cellar. It is a villa, open, vast, with marble columns, painted ceilings, and the faint scent of incense hanging in the air. Her name is Livia Drusilla, wife of Emperor Augustus, and the model, Roman Matrona, the ideal woman that all of Rome is told to revere. History describes her as the embodiment of Roman virtue, composed, chaste, modest in lifestyle. To many, she was the mother of the nation, the moral bedrock of an empire. But to maintain that image, Livia had to control not just her household, but Rome itself, and she did so with more precision than most could ever see. Livia was born in 58 BCE into a noble family. She was married at 15 to a man of political standing. Not long after, she met Gaius Octavius, the man who would become Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Their love story, at least as written, began with tragedy for her first husband. Octavian became so infatuated with Livia that he forced her husband to divorce her, marrying her while she was still pregnant. And just like that, from the very start, Livia's life was bound not to affection, but to power. During Augustus's reign, Livia was more than a wife. She was his silent advisor, always present at his side, always offering gentle suggestions, never overshadowing. This was Roman mastery. The greater the power, the more carefully it had to be veiled in the language of virtue. Unlike the women in the streets forced by law to wear the short toga that exposed their status, Livia wore the long stola, fine fabric in modest tones. This too was a uniform, but one that declared she belonged to a lawful man, and through him to the Roman state. Where the body of a brothel woman became a billboard, Livia's clothing was political declaration. She was the moral fortress of the empire. The historian Tacitus, who had little affection for her, hinted that she stood behind the suspicious deaths of several imperial heirs, clearing the path for her own son, Tiberius, to take the throne. Whether true or not is impossible to prove, but what is certain? Livia's reach went far beyond that of a wife. She managed alliances, cultivated factions, and maintained her public image with such care that few dared to criticize her outright. In her villa, mornings began with offerings to the gods, conversations with noble guests, and overseeing the tasks of her staff. Every detail was part of the message. Livia didn't just live virtuously. She was virtue embodied. In a society obsessed with contrasts between nobility and disgrace, between lawful wife and streetwalker, Livia became the perfect counterbalance to the women from segment 1. If brothel women were met with disgust at the fountain, Livia entered temples with bowed heads all around her. If they were forced into blonde wigs, Livia had entire teams of slaves to braid her real hair, setting golden pins in elaborate styles. If they were treated as commodities, Livia was venerated as the mother of the Roman people. This opposition wasn't accidental, it was part of the system. Rome needed both images, the chaste woman to enforce order and the disgraced woman to absorb desire. One was placed on a pedestal, the other was pushed into the dirt. Neither was truly free. But Livia, at least, held the reins of the game. Looking back, it's easy to compare Livia to other powerful women in other civilizations. In China, there was Empress Dowager Cixi, ruling both court and empire. In Egypt, Cleopatra, who met Caesar and Antony with beauty and cunning alike. In later Europe, Catherine the Great of Russia. Elizabeth I of England. All of them reveal the same truth. When women rise to power, society insists on wrapping them in either virtue or scandal, rarely acknowledging their full complexity as people. The dark humor of history is here. While scholars praise Livia for her thrift, her plain meals, her image as the perfect housewife, the reality may be that she steered the fate of princes, generals, and all of Rome with a whisper in Augustus's ear. If brothel women smiled to hold their clients, Livia smiled to hold the throne. At the end of her life, she was given the title Augusta, the highest honor a Roman woman could receive. She was worshipped in temples. Her statues stood beside Augustus. That is the immortality of the elite. While the names of women outside the brothel, scratched into the walls in charcoal, fade with rain and time. One is etched in marble, the other in trembling script. And when we consider this, we begin to see Rome's deepest hypocrisy. They glorified Livia as a moral standard, but in the same city they required brothel women to exist, to serve the appetites no temple could contain. They built shrines to Venus and Fortuna, but split womanhood in two, the goddess on a pedestal and the whore in the street. Livia understood this. She played her part to perfection. She chose the path of virtue. But it wasn't innocence, it was strategy. In Rome, no one escapes the system. You can only choose your role. And here lies the human truth. From brothel girl to empress, every woman had to perform. One performed to earn her meal. The other performed to hold her crown. But in both, the smile was always the weapon. Rome called Livia the mother of the nation, but if you peel away the polish, you find a woman who understood the game, who mastered control, and who accepted that she too was just another piece of Rome's grand machinery. She stood above the standard the brothel woman could never reach, and yet, in the end, both were trapped inside roles Rome had already written for them. If Livia was the solemn face of Rome, the woman worshipped in temples, immortalized in white marble, then Messalina was the crooked grin carved into graffiti, lively, unashamed, all appetite and nothing hidden. She was the wife of Emperor Claudius and proof that even the elite could sink into the very depths they once preached against. Imagine yourself standing in the forum. The rumors don't arrive on official scrolls sealed by the Senate. They move through whispers, passed between taverns and brothels, scratched onto walls with char. And the name, most whispered in the 40s CE, was Messalina. She married Claudius, a man seen as awkward, aging and easily manipulated. To many historians, she was Livia's mirror image in reverse. Where Livia represented restraint and moral control, Messalina embodied indulgence and manipulation through desire. If Livia was the mother of the nation, Messalina was the nightmare of the palace. The most infamous and most deliciously scandalous rumor about her was the so-called sexual marathon. Suetonius and Juvenal tell it like this. Messalina challenged a well-known brothel girl in Rome to see who could take on the most clients in a single day. Picture it, an empress in a crown and silk, a prostitute in a short toga and street graffiti, both stepping into a strange kind of Olympic event where medals were earned through exhaustion. According to the tale, Messalina won. She served over 20 men in one night and only stopped when her body finally gave out. Her opponent had already quit. It sounds more like a segment from Rome's Got Scandal than real history. But remember, these stories come from the pens of male historians, men who loved to turn powerful women into symbols of ruin. Maybe Messalina truly was excessive. Maybe she was simply the victim of character assassination. But Rome didn't need facts. Rome needed a story, and the story of Messalina was far too satisfying to let go. There's dark humor here. If you're a brothel woman, sleeping with many men in a night is survival. If you're Messalina, doing the same becomes a spectacle of power, a public thrill, a twisted kind of entertainment. Rome despised such rumors and couldn't get enough of them. Imagine being Messalina for a morning. You don't step out into the street, smile painted on, waiting for customers. You step out of a palace, surrounded by slaves, draped in perfume silk, not the harsh oils sold at market, jasmine in the air, light catching on satin. And yet, like a brothel girl, you know your body is not your own. It is a stage, a screen onto which Rome projects its cravings. Messalina is remembered not just for her marathon, but for something even more audacious, an affair with the nobleman Gaius Silius. Not just an affair, a full wedding. While Claudius was away, she allegedly held a public ceremony, the empress in a wedding dress, standing beside her lover, as all of Rome whispered behind their hands. It was scandal at its peak, a Roman reality show, and when Claudius returned, everything collapsed. In 48 CE, Messalina was executed under imperial orders, pressured by palace advisors. No trial, no defense. A woman who once held the palace in her hands was killed in her own garden by men who had once bowed to her. Rome's hypocrisy was never clearer. They mocked the brothel woman for her debauchery, but couldn't look away from Messalina, an empress who lived like a brothel queen within the marble walls. They praised Livia for her virtue and gossiped about Messalina with both glee and disgust. They wanted women to be either saint or seductress. There was no middle ground. And that binary, that split, is what makes their stories echo so loudly even now. In other cultures, the pattern repeats. In China, an empress caught in scandal might be erased entirely, even her name struck from the record. In Europe, queens like Marie Antoinette were accused of incest and promiscuity, mostly invented, but enough to lead them to the guillotine. In Egypt, Cleopatra was turned by Rome into a symbol of lust and manipulation, despite being a sharp and skillful leader. Everywhere, power in a woman is filtered through the lens of sex. And yet, it is the Messalinas that remind us. Rome was never just orators and senators and soldiers. It was also women and whispers and rumors and sly smiles in dark corridors. Official history doesn't record them all, but collective memory never forgets. You might ask, did Messalina really sleep with 20 men in one night? Did she truly marry her lover while still empress? The truth is likely long gone, but what Rome wanted you to believe, that's what mattered. That even an empress could fall. That the only thing separating a brothel woman from a crowned one might be the texture of her fabric or the height of her doorway. If Livia proved that virtue could be wielded as control, Messalina showed that desire too could be power, though it always came with punishment. Two images, two extremes, both living in Rome's imagination, and both in their own ways, revealing a deeper truth. No woman was ever free from the roles society wrote for her. You leave the forum, where rumors about Messalina still buzz like flies, and you realize sometimes history isn't written by scholars, it's whispered, it's embroidered into scandal, and it is those scandals, more than the marble statues, that jolt us awake and make us smile bitterly. And so you thought Rome only cared about palace scandal? Number. Rome also cared about the coins pouring into its treasury. The empire might judge you disgraceful, but it still wanted its share of that disgrace. And so Roman law taxed prostitution, even as it scorned it, turning your body into a kind of state asset. Imagine a morning where you make your way to the tax office, not the villa of Livia, not the forum where Messalina was whispered about, but a cramped little room where slaves jot down records, wax tablets list names, and coins clink into a box. You're not a free citizen, but Rome still wants your legal file. The law called it vectigul ex capturis, a tax on profits made from the body. 1 coin for each session, a cut for the treasury. Rome had no shame writing it down. They looked you in the eye, declared your work shameful, and then held out a hand, pay your tax. That was the dark humor of it all. Rome said, we do not respect your profession, and then added, but we absolutely won't let you skip the tax system. You submit your name, the clerk carves it into a tablet, not to honor you, but to track you. That tablet became a kind of registry of prostitution. You couldn't escape, couldn't easily change careers, because your name now lived inside the system. Rome didn't have computers, but it had slaves with wax pens. And that was enough to turn you into a line of data. And the irony? Look up to the elite, wrapped in their cloaks of virtue. They call you impure. But in the palace, Messalina was rumored to sleep with dozens in a night. They say you're worthless, yet they come to the brothel in the dark, then sit in the Senate by morning drafting laws against moral decay. And all the Senate truly cared about was, have you paid your taxes? A modern comparison. It's like a tech company saying, we care deeply about your privacy, while quietly selling your data to advertisers. Rome was the first multinational corporation, and your body was part of the product. You step back into the street after paying, the crowd bustles on, but something inside you feels carved. You are now state property. Not in the noble sense, like Livia's statue in a temple, but in the lowest sense, like a branded ox. Every breath and gesture tallied into the system. Roman law was clear. Lex Julia de Adulteris, from the time of Augustus, laid out strict rules for marriage and infidelity. A noblewoman caught cheating could be exiled, stripped of all property. But a brothel woman? She couldn't commit adultery, because in the eyes of the law you already belonged to the public. There was no concept of betraying a husband, because the law never allowed you the right to have one. A cruel joke in legal form. You were made into an exception, and that exception stripped you of your humanity. Meanwhile, the law protected the customer's rights. If a client claimed you didn't deliver the service, he could sue. You, however, had no right to sue back. No legal ground to say, he hit me, or he didn't pay. To the law, you were a service. Nothing more. Now imagine this. You're a brothel worker in Pompeii. Your name appears in the tax registry. One day, Vesuvius erupts. The city is buried. Centuries later, archaeologists dig you up. They find graffiti with your name and tax receipts etched into wax tablets. And suddenly, your name, once collected just to extract taxes, becomes part of history. A harsh joke from time itself. Rome tried to control you, and in doing so accidentally made you unforgettable. And if you look across cultures, the hypocrisy is familiar. In China, the state condemned courtesans as shameful, but still taxed their brothels. In Japan, geisha required licenses with strict regulations. In medieval Europe, many cities ran state-sanctioned brothels, controlling, profiting, and condemning all at once. History everywhere is the same. Society scorns you, the state counts your earnings. You could laugh bitterly. Rome built statues of Caesar, painted portraits of Livia, but for you, Rome carved only a tax code. If Caesar was a national treasure in the grandest sense, then you too were state property, but in the lowest, most anonymous way. Here's the darkest humor of all. When you pay your tax, you help fund the very structures that exclude you. That coin you hand over might become a brick in the Colosseum, where someday men will cheer as blood spills on stone. Your body feeds the empire, and in return, the empire gives you nothing but contempt. Rome had a cruel justification for this. They called your profession infamia, infamy. But infamy wasn't a crime. It was a label. They stuck that label on you. To make their disdain legal, they needed you for the system to run, but they would never acknowledge you as fully human, and so you move through the day both a person and a tax line. You exist in ledgers, in graffiti, in curses, but not in respect. Your body is a tool, a profit stream, and in the end a government income. And when you think on it, you see Rome wasn't so different from every empire after. People have always found ways to turn desire into commerce, into numbers, laws, and revenue. The only difference is, in Rome, the hypocrisy was carved openly into stone and wax. We despise you. Now pay your tax, you sigh. In the street, you hear a soldier's boots, a merchant's pitch, a burst of laughter from a tavern. And you know, you're not just a name in graffiti, you're also a line item in the Roman budget. Rome took even the most private part of you, your body, and made it public property. And in this game, you never got to say no. You step out of the tax office, your name freshly etched onto a wax tablet. On the street, the sound of hobnailed boots echoes from passing soldiers. Cries of vendors mix with the smell of dried fish and coal smoke. And in the distance, rising solemnly on marble foundations, stands the Roman Senate, where men in spotless white togas debate virtue, law, and order. If the brothel is where your body is commodified, the Senate is where your soul is judged. You sit at the forum, listening to a public session. From behind a marble column, a senator's voice rings out, booming, as if Jupiter himself had borrowed the man's tongue. He declares that Rome must defend family values, that brothels are corrupting morals, that prostitutes are a threat to social stability. People around you nod, some even clap. But in your mind, a quiet question flickers. Wasn't he at the brothel last week? This is the theatre of hypocrisy. By day they wear crisp togas, sit in marble halls, condemn you. By night they shed the toga, put on shadows and walk into the very rooms where you work. You are their excuse to look righteous before the people, and also their secret refuge when the weight of righteousness becomes too much to bear. You might laugh bitterly. A Roman senator is not so different from a Puritan preacher centuries later. The more loudly he preaches against desire, the more likely he is to be caught drowning in it. History seems to enjoy repeating this particular joke. And it's not just senators, writers, philosophers, poets. They all joined the act. Juvenal, with sneering wit, wrote that Roman women had no morals, only parties and affairs on their minds. Martial cracked jokes about brothel workers, mocking them but never hiding his fascination. Ovid, the poet of love, was exiled, in part for writing too openly about sex, where prostitutes appeared without shame or disguise. They wrote, they joked, they sneered. But the truth is, without you, what would they write about? You were denied as a person, but became material, literature, spectacle, a never-ending performance. You were not the main character in Rome's official history, but you haunted it like a shadow that never left the stage. Picture a night after a Senate session. The man who stood by day on a wooden platform calling for moral reform now walks into the brothel. He recognizes your look, hands you coins, takes off his toga, and on the cold stone floor, every word of oratory disappears, replaced by breathless need. Come morning, he'll pull the toga back on, clear his throat, and return to condemning decay. A perfect loop of perfectly performed hypocrisy. Rome is no exception. In China, Confucian scholars wrote about virtue and loyalty, but the red light district stayed busy. In Japan, samurai praised honor, but sat for hours with geisha. In Europe, Puritans banned dancing, but the court records are full of prostitution trials. Power always needs two things: a moral mirror to admire itself in and a shadowy corner to indulge in. You hear a philosopher stand up in the Senate, his voice smooth like a TED talk from another century. He says prostitutes corrupt the male soul, that Rome must eliminate this moral threat. But even in his speech you notice a truth: he cannot stop talking about you. You are a collective obsession, denied but never forgotten. The dark humor reveals itself again. If Rome truly hated you, why didn't they abolish brothels? If the Senate truly despised you, why did they still collect your taxes, read poetry about you, dream of you? Rome needed you as a public sinner to help them feel righteous. You were the excuse they used to convince themselves they stood taller. As you pass through the forum in the afternoon, you see wooden boards posted with notices, new laws, new decrees, new promises of moral reform. But the boldest words you read are scrawled graffiti on a nearby wall. Fortunata does better work than anyone in the Senate. And you smile, because among all the statues, the speeches, and the polished laws, it's sometimes the crude scrawl that tells the truth. Rome prided itself on white marble, on eloquent orators, on strict legal codes, but Rome was just as obsessed with you as it was with Caesar or Augustus. If the Senate was the stage of power, then you were the supporting character, always in the script, never named on the poster, but present in every scene. You leave the forum, where the Senate has just concluded another performance of oratory. The senators, having denounced the depravity of brothel women, step into their chariots, adjust their togas, and vanish into private villas. Footsteps still echo on marble floors, but inside you, only emptiness remains. Rome speaks of virtue, Rome speaks of honor, but Rome also silently counts the coin you just paid in taxes. You return to the street where you live and work. There, the stone wall of the brothel greets you, rough, damp, and moldy, but also covered in carved graffiti. These are not Senate records, not soaring speeches, not marble plaques honoring Caesar. They are graffiti, small words, crude and resilient, telling a collective biography no historian ever bothered to write. You reach out and run your fingers along the carvings. One line reads, "A Timotous screwed here with roaring success." Maritimus knows how to please. Fortunata charges 2 asses. No metaphors, no poetry, just rawness, sometimes vulgar, sometimes playful, but always real. Not the voice of the Senate, nor of the poets, but the voice of those who stepped into this room, paid a coin, and left a mark. And through those words, you and your fellow women became part of history. Not in marble, but in ash and knife scratch. There is something bitter and strangely beautiful. It is the graffiti that let history remember you. Official history recorded Augustus, Caesar, Livia, Messalina. They appear in scrolls, in statues, in declarations. But you? You have no lineage, no chronicler. And yet thousands of years later, when Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii, it was these little scrawled messages that preserved your name. Archaeology brought the proof. At Pompeii, they found hundreds of graffiti about sex, brothels and prostitutes with real names: Fortunata, Cressa, Myrtis. Names that never made it into the scrolls, but now appear in museums, in research papers, in university lectures. A cruel joke of fate. The women once labeled disgraceful have outlived the senators who condemned them. You could say official history is like a marble statue in a temple, grand, proud, but fragile under war, under fire, under time. Graffiti is a scratch on a wall, unnoticed, uncelebrated. But when lava falls, it endures. A clumsy carved name can live longer than an empire. That's where the dark humor lies. Rome tried to define you as an exception, unworthy of record. But Rome's own walls, its carving knives and its compulsive scribblers, did the opposite. While historians painstakingly wrote of battles and speeches, it is the line, "Fortunata is the best in here," that makes us smile and whisper. So that's how they lived. Graffiti reveals something else too, a collective obsession. People could not stop writing about you. To brag, to insult, to joke, they had to leave a trace. You were never a citizen, but you became public record. You never sat in the Senate, but your name echoes on Rome's walls. Across cultures, we see similar patterns. In Egypt, courtesans were sometimes named in papyri, but most remained anonymous. In China, singing girls appeared in poetry, but under nicknames. In Japan, geisha were drawn in woodblock prints, but rarely named. Only in Pompeii was a prostitute's name carved directly into stone. Vulgar, yes, but enduring. It's as if Rome, for all its hypocrisy, still left a crack where truth could leak out. You step back, take in the full wall. Names upon names, new scratches over old, like layers of memory. Not a personal biography, but a communal one. A community never acknowledged, yet ever present in the bloodstream of Rome. And in that moment you see a quiet, human truth. Official history is curated. But memory? Memory is stubborn. An empire may raise statues, mint coins, write laws, all to glorify the elite. But a hasty joke, a carved name, a dirty scribble can last longer than all of it. A name etched into stone may outlive the paper scrolls of history. You exhale, your hand still resting on the wall. Outside, Rome clamors, hooves on stone, vendors shouting, senators declaring. But here, in the shadow of a narrow street, the graffiti whisper, "We were here. We lived. We loved. We laughed. We hurt. We sold ourselves to survive." The carvings on Pompeii's walls whisper that they once existed. But behind those scrawled names lies a story that stone cannot hold, a story of pain, of wounds, of fragile belief. To stand outside a brothel every day meant enduring more than just the stares, more than the Senate's judgment. It meant enduring your own body, a body turned into land under constant harvest. It fed you, but it also harbored sickness, pain, bleeding you silently from the inside out. And when medicine ran out of answers, when pain outlasted will, people turned to gods, to curses, to whispered prayers and strange rituals. That world, half science, half superstition, was a mirror of both human frailty and desperate creativity. This is where we begin a new chapter. Gods, curses, and the hidden body. You might be able to forget the contemptuous glances in the street. You might, for a while, forget the coins owed to the treasury. But there is one thing you can't leave at the brothel door: your body. It follows you into the cellar, onto the straw bed, into your broken sleep. And when you wake, it whispers in pain. One morning, you open your eyes. Dim light slips through a crack in the wall. You shift, and pain runs through you like a reminder. This job doesn't just cost you coins. It leaves marks you can't show. A sore thigh, an aching back, a burning throat, a scrape on your skin, a bruise on your hip, and worse, the sting deep inside that no powder or perfume can ever cover. The Romans had names, vague names, for what they didn't fully understand. They spoke of lus venerea, Venus's disease. They knew the itching, the open sores that wouldn't heal, the smell that came from wounds. Doctors like Celsus and later Galen described these things with calm detachment: ulcers, discharge, searing pain. But to you it wasn't theory, it was fire between your legs, burning with every step. At the public fountain you wash your face. You try to hide the wince. They might think you're just tired, but you know, every touch might take a piece of you. You earn with your flesh, and flesh is where the disease finds you. Clients were different. They came, paid, used, and left. If they got sick, they blamed you and the filth of brothels. You had no right to blame them. Rome had already decided you were the source of sickness, even if they were the ones who brought it to you. Dark humor of fate, Rome made you both the cause and the victim. You remember a colleague, a young woman, bright, quick to smile. She vanished after a few months. They whispered she fell ill. The sores spread. Eventually she couldn't get out of bed. No one marked her grave. No historian wrote her name. Only a faint line of graffiti remained, a ghost in scratched wax and wall. Your body becomes a silent battlefield. Every client is another spear aimed your way. You don't know if today will just be tiredness or if something new has crept in, quietly, invisibly. The fever comes without warning. Cold sweats in the night, dry, cracked lips in the morning, blurred eyes. Roman medicine had few answers. Herbs, wine with honey, prayers to drive away evil spirits, hope diluted by desperation. Imagine stepping into the therme for comfort, only to feel hot water sting broken skin. Other women's eyes glance at you. They see the red marks, the stiff movement. You feel exposed, not just as a prostitute, but as a body falling apart. Perhaps this is the real price, not just shame, not just copper coins, but flesh slowly tearing, skin softening into rot, a life expectancy shorter than most other women. Historians confirm it. Brothel workers died younger, not from weakness, but because every touch was a gamble, every kiss a risk. You wonder, was the body ever meant for pleasure? Or did society simply mold it that way? The answer might lie in history's irony. Even as Rome preached virtue, even as the Senate judged you, they all knew your body fed the economy. And that economy kept turning, even after your collapse. Across cultures, the pain echoes. In China, Yiji played music, poured wine, and died early. In Japan, geisha and oiran lived under the red lanterns, facing the same risks. In medieval Europe, prostitutes were blamed for plagues, but still taxed, still used. Everywhere, women who sold intimacy carried the weight of society's fear and desire. You exhale, a dull pain flares in your lower belly. You know you can't escape. Only endure until endurance runs dry. Maybe that's why the graffiti mattered so much. The history books won't name you. But scratched into a wall, your name might survive longer than your body ever could. In the silence of night, as Rome settles, you lie on your straw bed. The pain softens only slightly, leaving space for exhaustion. and you realize every coin was paid for, not just with a smile, but with skin, with blood, with breath. And in that moment, one quiet truth emerges. The cost of existence is always counted in the body. You already know the cost of every touch, the aching body, the festering wounds, the fever that won't break. But Rome, like every civilization, never lets people suffer without offering something. Some way to soothe, sometimes a cure, often just a distraction. And like so many others, you tried them all. Wine, medicine, and dreams in the temple. Let's start with the simplest. Wine. Rome is soaked in it. From the cramped taverns to the lavish feasts, amphorae of sour, red liquid crowd every corner. For you, wine isn't for toasts, it's for forgetting. You remember one night, your body throbbed so badly, you couldn't sleep. You lifted a heavy cup, drank in one gulp. The heat slid down your throat, stinging, then spreading through your limbs. Your head blurred, your body softened. The pain didn't vanish, but it receded into the hazy dark of your mind. Dark humor lives here. Rome condemned you as disgraceful, but Rome also supplied your painkiller. That same senator preaching virtue by day drinks himself into a stupor by night, sprawled in the triclinium, wine on his lips. You do the same, just without the velvet cushions and fanning slaves. Sometimes the wine was mixed with herbs and poppy resin. Roman doctors knew opium verbacum. A pinch in the cup was enough to send you drifting. You remember someone passing you a tiny vial once, saying, "Drink, it'll help," you did. And yes, the pain dulled, giving way to a blank, floating silence. In that fogged sleep, you dreamed of a world where your body was weightless, where no ache reached you. But there was always a price. You woke with a dry mouth, a skull heavy as stone, and the pain had returned, sometimes worse. You realized wine and opium were patches, not cures. They only pushed the pain forward, from today to tomorrow. But if tomorrow still comes, that's one more day survived. Beyond drink and drugs, Rome offered one more remedy. Strange, yes, but full of hope. Dreams in the temple of Asclepius. Asclepius, the god of medicine, had temples scattered across the empire. The sick would journey there, wash, offer gifts, then sleep in sacred silence. People believed the god would send a dream to reveal the cure. Priests would interpret the dream. Herbs to drink, prayers to recite, or sometimes simply keep believing. You went once, with a few others. The journey was long, but hope carried you. That night, you lay on a cool stone floor. The air thick with incense, chants echoing through the dark. You drifted into sleep and dreamed of a snake curling around your arm, then slipping away. The priest told you it was a sign. You needed to purify, drink honey water, fast, pray. You followed the instructions. And for a few days your body felt lighter, as if the god had truly intervened. Was it real? Or just your mind, desperate to believe? For you, that question didn't matter. What mattered was simple. In a world where medicine failed, sometimes belief was the strongest medicine. Cross cultures, it's familiar. In Egypt, they prayed to Isis. In China, to Guanyin. In Japan, Shinto rituals were offered for health. Where medicine falters, humans reach for gods. Sometimes you smirk bitterly. Wine, drugs, dreams, all ways to temporarily forget that your body is being carved down piece by piece. But sometimes you see something gentler. Even in pain, humans always reach for hope. Rome might judge you. The Senate might scorn you, clients might discard you, but wine gave you a few hours of forgetting. Opium gave you sleep without dreams. Asclepius's temple gave you the illusion that someone listened. And sometimes illusion is enough to get through one more day. You return to your cellar after the temple journey. In your hand, a small charm, a snake carved into it. The priest gave it to you. You hang it by your bed. A quiet plea for protection. Outside, Rome is loud. The Senate still performs, the brothel still swells with footsteps, but in your corner, there is one fragile hope that tonight the dream will be softer and your body will carry you through one more day. You can drink wine to forget the pain. You can reach for opium for a few hours of dreamless sleep. You can even lie beneath the temple roof of Asclepius, praying the god will heal you in a dream. But when you return to the cellar, when life resumes its quiet, brutal repetition, you realize something simple. Faith has to live where you do. And so the brothel, the place Rome calls its filthiest, has its altars too. Small, makeshift, but present. Places where gods still listen to the prayers of those the world has thrown away. In the corner of the room, on a wobbly wooden shelf, sits a tiny statue of Venus. Not a polished marble carving from a noble villa, but a rough terracotta figure. The beauty of the goddess has been reduced, her face just a suggestion, her eyes faint shadows. But to you she is still Venus, the goddess who can turn a fake smile into income and shield your heart from hardening completely. You light incense. The smoke curls upward, clinging to the soot-stained ceiling. You whisper, "Let today's clients be gentle. Let this body hold out a little longer." The prayer isn't for happiness, it's for survival. And sometimes survival is miracle enough. Venus isn't alone. On the altar, there's also an old coin, placed before a small figure of Fortuna, goddess of luck. You believe that if Fortuna smiles, today's client might pay in full, might stay sober, might not hurt you. But if she turns away, the night will be long, bruised, and bone deep. Your survival rests in the hands of a goddess holding a wheel. Then there's Mercury, god of merchants and tricksters. In a world where the body is currency, Mercury becomes familiar. You pray for his help with bargaining, for clients to keep their word, for the exchange to feel fair, in a trade that is never fair. You even tuck a small charm shaped like his caduceus staff into the corner of your bed, as if to remind the client, pay what you promised. And finally, Libertus, the guardian of freed slaves. Many of your colleagues were once enslaved, freed either by grace or force, only to be pushed into this life. They wear small amulets with Libertus's name, hoping that one day they might leave the brothel, open a tavern, or at least buy their children's freedom. You look at that amulet and wonder, will I ever be called free? There's a dark humor in it. Rome calls this place shameful. Yet even here, the gods remain. Maybe the gods know people don't only pray in marble temples, but in stink-filled rooms. A whispered prayer beside a straw bed is no less sincere than a ritual on the Capitol. Picture one evening. The client leaves, the room falls silent. Only the incense still smoulders. You sit, hands trembling with exhaustion. You look up at your altar. 4 gods sharing a narrow space. And you notice the paradox. While the Senate debates morality, while the historians sing of glory, this, the lowest corner of Rome, contains a deeper kind of faith, the religion of survival. Archaeologists have found proof. In Pompeii's brothels, they uncovered frescoes of Venus, phallic amulets to ward off the evil eye, and coins placed before Fortuna's image. These artifacts say, behind every transaction of flesh, there was another negotiation with the divine. Cross-culturally, this isn't strange. In Japan, geisha place altars to Inari in Hanamachi. In China, courtesans pray to Guanyin, or the god of wealth. In medieval Europe, brothels had shrines to Saint Mary Magdalene, the saint who had once been a sinner. Wherever there are people who sell their bodies, there are altars. as if humans never stopped bargaining with gods over the price of their own flesh. You sit there, watching the incense curl. Its smell mingles with sweat, spilled wine, and sharp perfume. A strange mixture, profane and sacred. You think, perhaps Venus doesn't care whether her prayer comes from marble or mildew. A prayer is still a prayer, and faith is still faith. In the silence, you whisper one last time, "Let this body endure one more night." Then you blow out the oil lamp. Outside, Rome remains loud, the Senate hypocritical, history unbothered. But here, in this narrow space between four thin walls, you and the gods have had your conversation. No one witnessed it, no one will write it down, but perhaps that makes it the truest kind of prayer. You've lit incense for Venus, Fortuna, Mercury, and Libertus. But sometimes prayer isn't enough. The gods may be busy listening to 1,000 voices at once, and you need something more immediate, more personal, a charm held in your hand, or a silent curse carved in secret. In your cramped little room, you might keep a strip of red cloth under your pillow. It's not for decoration, it's a red charm, something many of your colleagues believe can ward off the evil eye, the jealous, competitive stare that sours luck. They whisper that with a piece of red cloth, your body will fall ill less often, clients won't vanish, and co-workers won't turn cruel. You're not sure it works, but in a world where luck is threadbare, you'll cling to any scrap that offers protection. Out on the streets, you see other women wearing phallic amulets, tiny bronze or bone pendants swinging with each step. Crude, yet sacred. To the Romans, this symbol wasn't just about flesh, it was a talisman, an ancient emoji to shield against misfortune. And to you, it's a reminder, even the body can become a lucky charm, but you don't always stay on the defensive. Sometimes you want to curse. You remember the client who skipped out on paying, a colleague who stole your customer in broad daylight, a powerful man who made promises, then disappeared. You can't scream these things in the streets, but you can etch them into a cursed tablet, thin sheets of lead inscribed with anger, folded tight, then buried under the floor or dropped into a well. Picture yourself at night. An oil lamp casts long shadows across the wall. You hold a piece of lead, carving carefully. May Pluto and Persephone punish the one who deceived me. May he be impotent. May he lose sleep. May he suffer as I have you fold the tablet shut, pressing it hard between your hands. The next day, you toss it into the pit near the temple. You don't know if the curse works, but when you hear he slipped, lost his coin pouch, or fell ill, you smile. Maybe the gods heard you after all. Archaeology has unearthed hundreds of such tablets across Rome. Many of them came from brothel workers or their clients, filled with jealousy, bitterness, or a desperate plea for justice. Some cursed rivals to grow ugly, some begged clients to return, some wished for enemies to never know pleasure again. Each one speaks a simple truth. Even in the world Rome dismisses, people still crave control over fate, even if only through a rushed, bitter wish scratched into lead. Here comes the dark humor. Rome could build the Colosseum, stage grand entertainments for tens of thousands, and in that same city, a brothel girl quietly etches a curse on scrap metal, praying that the man who cheated her gets a stomachache. Great power and petty desperation, they coexist, mirroring each other like a warped reflection. Belief in the evil eye was just as strong. You remember a time a colleague proudly showed off jewelry from a wealthy client. Not long after, she fell ill. Whispers flew, someone had cast the eye on her. Soon, the entire brothel was decked with red charms, phallic pendants, and protective amulets. No one wanted envy to turn into illness. Cross-culturally, this is nothing new. In the Middle East, people believe in the hamsa, the hand against the evil eye. In China, red strings tied around the wrist are protective. In Europe, horseshoes hang for luck. All reflect the same fear that someone else's gaze can wound. Rome just made a different choice, a bold one. They used the penis. It's ridiculous, and it's brilliant. They took the very thing that causes desire and conflict and made it a shield. You sit at your little altar, fingers brushing the red cloth, next to a shiny bronze amulet. And in your heart you wonder, maybe this is all superstition, maybe no God is really listening, maybe no charm can stop disease, and no curse can bring justice. But then you remember, in Rome, the Senate is full of hypocrisy. The law doesn't protect you. Clients aren't fair. So if a scrap of red cloth or a folded piece of lead can offer even a drop of comfort, then it's more valuable than any promise from the empire. You sigh and blow out the lamp in the dark. The red cloth still glows faintly like a drop of blood suspended mid-air. And you know, whether it works or not, it reminds you you're not entirely powerless. In a world where your body is a commodity, at least you can write a curse, tie a charm, and believe that fate, just maybe, can still be bent. You once believed that prayer and amulets belonged only in the hidden corners of the brothel. But centuries later, when the city of Pompeii was buried and then unearthed, the world discovered something else. Rome had left traces of desire everywhere, not just in mines, not just in graffiti, but on walls, on charms, in statues. Follow the footsteps of the archaeologists. They entered brothels preserved by Vesuvius's ash. And there, on the walls, they found frescoes, erotic paintings so vivid they could still make the modern world blush. Positions, pleasure, nakedness, all laid bare on plaster, as if customers could pick a service just by pointing. Rome didn't hide, Rome advertised. If today's fast food joints have menu boards, Pompeii's brothels had their own, painted right onto the walls. On shelves, archaeologists found small phallic statues, not one, hundreds, made of bronze, terracotta, even marble. They were hung over doorways, placed in rooms, mounted on street lamps. To the Romans, these weren't just sexual symbols, they were good luck charms against the evil eye. A bit of humorous symbolism. If we use emoji in our messages today, Rome had entire streets lined with penis-shaped amulets. Sometimes you can only laugh bitterly. Your body was called shameful, yet it became the inspiration for countless symbols, paintings, and figurines. You were judged as lowly, but the traces of your profession have outlived the speeches of the Senate. When Augustus passed morality laws, he couldn't have imagined that the clearest thing left behind would be a sex scene painted on a brothel wall. Cross-cultural comparison makes this even clearer. In Egypt, sexual records were kept on papyrus, discreet, read only by elites. In China, Chun-Gong paintings were hidden in wooden boxes, brought out only during secret feasts. In Japan, shunga woodblock prints were rolled up, stored in drawers, sold in whispers. But Rome was different. Rome painted them on walls. Rome displayed statues in public. Rome dangled charms over doors, as if desire wasn't shameful, but simply a part of public life. Here is the dark humor. Rome preached morality in the Senate and plastered sex on its walls. One hand wagged a finger at you, while the other hung phallic charms across the city. People say Rome was a civilization of laws and armies, but archaeology reminds us it was also a civilization of icons, and that's where the human reflection lies. Because when you look at these frescoes, these charms, these little statues, you realize human beings have always needed symbols to speak what cannot be said. In Rome, it was the phallus charm. In Egypt, lines on papyrus. In China, hidden scrolls. In today's world, emojis in a text message. Whether through ink or chisel or pixel, people have always found a way to express desire, fear, and the forbidden. You sit in your small cellar room, gazing at a wall where a few faded markings remain. You don't know how long they'll last, but you understand something deeply. Even if your name disappears, even if your body dissolves, these symbols will whisper to the future. Not about glory, not about conquest, but about human nature. Its fragility, its longing, and the effort to carve that into memory. You sigh and lie back down on the straw mattress. Out there, Rome continues its hypocrisy. The Senate continues its noise, but here, in your world, symbols speak in your place. And in the silence, you know. If history is told in marble monuments, then human memory is written in scribbled lines, in tiny charms, in immortal icons, erotic frescoes, phallic charms, crude graffiti. All show us how Rome turned desire into public iconography. But behind the fading pigments, behind the vulgar laughter, there is another story, quieter, more fragile. The story of feeling. Whether real or false, fleeting or clung to, emotion still threaded its way through those darkened rooms. Because while the body could be sold, the heart still reached for something else. Connection, even if only for a moment. And when youth fades, when beauty withers, what remains? Not the painted wall, not the metal amulet, but shards of memory, a whispered promise of love, a friendship formed in shadows, the daily miracle of survival. This is where we begin the final chapter of this journey. Love, aging, and the memory of the forgotten. You've heard thousands of moans, hundreds of whispers. Most meant nothing. Empty lines forgotten the moment the door clicked shut. But sometimes, in the haze of wine and smeared laughter, a client would look at you, really look at you, place his hand over yours and whisper, "I'll come back. I won't leave you here forever." And somehow, in that rancid room, those words sounded like poetry. You knew the odds of him returning were only slightly better than the chance of Mercury himself showing up to collect your fee. But your heart still skipped. Because in that moment, illusion felt like truth. Picture him, a man sitting on your bed, toga slipping from one shoulder, a cup of wine in hand. He speaks of a wife far away, of marble halls filled with silence, of loneliness in a palace. He says you're different, that you have something his wife no longer gives him. You listen, half doubting. You know it's a performance, yours and his, but even a performance can stir something real. Dark humor curls around the moment. They all promise the same things, as if reading from the same script. I'll take you away. I'll buy your freedom. I'll give you a home. Each line like a debt Rome never intends to pay. A kind of emotional credit, promised today, forgotten tomorrow. And you? You doubt, and still you hope. Because in a brothel where your body aches, where the law ignores you, even illusions have value. A single "I love you" might be enough to get you through another night. Like a gulp of cheap wine, it doesn't nourish, but it dulls the hunger. Even Pompeii's graffiti bears faint traces of these fragile affections. Someone once carved, "A Timidus loves Iris." Crude, clumsy, but it exists. Maybe it was a boast, maybe a joke. But in the collective memory, it's proof that even here, in a brothel, love, or at least the longing for love, still carved its way into stone. Cross-culturally, you see the same pattern. In Greece, some hetairae were genuinely cherished, companions to philosophers. In Japan, geisha were sometimes kept for life by a samurai receiving handwritten love letters. In Renaissance Europe, a courtesan might be painted as a lover, but most of the time it was illusion. Clients promised, courtesans believed, and time quietly erased everything. You remember a colleague who truly believed. She received gifts. She waited. Every day she said, "He'll come back." But he didn't. He left her with trinkets and a heart ground down to dust. She still smiled at the door, but at night you heard her crying. And that's when you understood. Love in the brothel is like smoke. It flickers into view, then vanishes. So you learned to believe and not believe, to believe enough to survive, to doubt enough to stay whole. A delicate balance. Close your heart entirely, and you become a smiling corpse. Believe too much, and you crumble. Maybe that's the cruel miracle of brothel love. It's not lasting, not true, but still necessary. Like a flickering oil lamp, not bright enough to light the room, but just enough to stop you from drowning in darkness. And when you reflect, you offer a bitter smile. Perhaps all of Rome lives on illusion. The Senate dreams of morality. The emperor dreams of glory. The client dreams of love. And you dream of escape. The whole empire held together by promises, each fragile vow a dab of plaster between marble blocks. You lie back on your straw bed, recalling a voice that once whispered, "I'll come back." You don't know if he ever did. But tonight, those words are enough. Enough to feel your heart beat faster. Enough to smile. Enough to survive one more day. If the love from clients was nothing but a fragile illusion, then the real affection you found lived quietly in the shadows, among the women who lived with you, breathed with you, hurt with you, inside the brothel. You remember that night. All the clients were gone. The room lay empty, thick with the smell of spilled wine, sharp perfume, and the fading heat of oil lamps burning low. You and a colleague sat with your backs against the wall, silent. No need for words. Just breathing in sync was enough to remind you you were not alone. In this place the world saw as disgraceful. It was this quiet sheltering of one another that kept you from unraveling. By day, you might compete for clients. But when night fell, you shared a crust of hard bread, a threadbare blanket, and whispered confessions. I hurt so much today. No one judged, no one promised. Only a silent understanding. We are all trying to survive. Sometimes that connection went beyond friendship. In a world where men walked in and out, where promises shattered like cracked bronze mirrors, the women turned toward each other. A hug that lingered too long, a rushed kiss in the dark, a hand gripping another when pain surged. No one called it love in any grand sense. It was just a sliver of warmth, a tiny flame in a cold cellar. But sometimes that tiny flame was the only thing keeping someone from despair. Archaeology cannot recover those moments, but now and then a trace remains. In Pompeii, some graffiti speak not just of prices and pleasure, but something stranger. Julia misses Thais. A crude heart scratched beside two women's names. Archaeologists might call it emotional evidence or dismiss it as a joke. But you know the truth. In the shadows, where no one cared to listen, it was these quiet bonds that felt the most real. Dark humor rises again. Rome exalted the friendships of men, brothers in arms, comrades in the Senate, and called them the bedrock of the Republic and Empire. But Rome would never praise the hidden affections between women in brothels. Yet it was exactly those bonds that allowed them to endure, even as the Senate preserved only the names of its own. Cross-culturally, the pattern repeats. In Japan, geisha wrote tender letters to each other, masked as sisterhood. In China, courtesans formed sworn sisterhoods, shared earnings, raised each other's children when one passed. In medieval Europe, women in brothels lived in communities, protecting each other from violent clients and corrupt officials. Wherever society turned away, women turned to one another. You remember another night. A young girl, new to the trade, shaking after her first client. She sobbed, hands trembling too much to hold a cup of water. You held her, stroked her hair, and whispered, "You'll get used to it. We'll survive this together." In that moment, you became her sister, even if you weren't much older yourself. That embrace didn't change the world. It didn't collapse the brothel, but it kept one person from breaking. Sometimes these bonds became strange little families. 3, 4 women sharing food, pooling money for lamp oil, nursing each other through sickness. No documents, no laws, just a family built in the dark. While Rome crafted legal households from marriages and bloodlines, you and they built one from shared existence. And so you came to understand a bitter but human truth: the love from men was illusion. But the love and friendship in the shadows, that was real. It wasn't grand, it wasn't celebrated, but it had the power to resist the slow erosion of the soul. The historians may never write it, the Senate will never care. Archaeology might only find a scrawled name. But you know this: if anything helped the women of the brothel survive night after night, it wasn't the promises of men, it was the hand of the woman sitting next to you. You sigh, lean your back against the wall, feel the quiet breath of your sleeping colleague beside you. Out there, Rome still murmurs. The clatter of soldiers, wheels on stone, vendors crying out. But in here, in this narrow room, you hear only your heartbeat and the steady breathing of someone else. And you know, this is bonds in the shadows. A nameless connection, no glory, but strong enough to keep a person alive. Time inside the brothel moves faster than it does out on the street. Out there, a nobleman can grow old in glory, his hair silver, yet still seated in the Senate. His skin wrinkled, yet still painted in portrait. But you, every crease, every sunspot, every missing tooth is a quiet reminder that in Rome's eyes your worth fades by the day. You remember the first time you looked into a warped bronze mirror. Your hair no longer soft. Dark circles clinging under sleepless eyes. A smile that no longer reached your face. You tried. More oil, more powder. But nothing masked the slow erosion of age, and you knew the clients saw it too. They picked the younger ones with brighter laughs and tighter skin. You were pushed toward the corner, like a product nearing expiration. The dark humor is clear. Rome treated your body as merchandise, and every piece of merchandise has a shelf life. But unlike a thing, you couldn't just be replaced. You had to keep living. You had to find a way to keep going as age slowly turned you from desirable to disposable. Some women became madams. No longer lying in bed, they stood by the door, handled the haggling, collected the coin, assigned the nights. They traded their experience for a semblance of authority. But even that was an illusion. A madam was not a noblewoman, not a villa mistress. She was someone who once sold her own body, now surviving by selling others. Her eyes sharp at the door, but at night she too stared into her bronze mirror and faced the same tired wrinkles. Others turned into fortune tellers. They set up tiny stalls, hung amulets, read palms, cast bones, gazed into oil to see futures. Clients believed those who had lived in darkness could see what lay ahead. To you, it was another way to turn pain into profit. If the body could no longer be sold, then mystery, voice, and a haunted stare might become a new kind of commodity. But some never found a way out. They kept working, despite the years. They stood by the door, makeup thick, perfume strong, smiles stretched thin, the price lower, the clients rougher. But they held on, not out of desire, but because there was nothing else. Rome gave them no choices. A retired soldier could be granted land. A disgraced senator could live off inheritance. But an aging brothel woman had only two roads: sell herself cheap or starve. Even archaeology reveals this quiet cruelty. In Pompeii, graffiti remains. Crude scrawlings mocking older women. She's too old for this. Ugly words, but truthful in their reflection. Age didn't just steal beauty, it turned you into a joke. Cross-culture tells the same tale. In Japan, aging geisha became okiya mistresses, training the next generation. In China, retired courtesans became matchmakers or managed the house. In Renaissance Europe, a courtesan once painted in oil could end her life in cold poverty. Only a rare few, the wildly lucky, secured any status after the brothel. The rest, like you, faced a choice: hold on or vanish. You remember an older sister in the trade, once famed across the district for her beauty. Now she sits in a corner, hair gone silver, hands trembling. Sometimes a drunken client comes by, tosses a few cheap coins just to mock her. She still accepts, because those coins buy bread. You look at her and see your future. No space for dreams of love, no Venus, no Fortuna, only exhaustion. And then you understand a truth, both human and brutal. Society defines a woman's worth by beauty, but beauty never stays. And when it leaves, Rome looks away. The final dark humor: Caesar aged and was carved in marble. Augustus aged and was called father of the nation. But you aged and became worthless. History honors silver hair in men but sees yours as a stain. You lie back, look down at your hands, veined, calloused, worn. You know you're walking toward that place. And yet in the dark, you feel a faint pride rising. You've survived. You endured years many could not, and maybe, in a world soaked in hypocrisy, survival itself is a kind of victory. You've lived an entire life inside the brothel, from the illusions of love, to the friendships in the shadows, to the slow arrival of age. And yet, there's something strange. Rome may forget you, the Senate may deny you, the clients may disregard you, but the walls will not. Look around this room. The faded scratches from generations past still linger. Names like Fortunata, Artemitus, Iris. Once they evoked a moment, now they belong to memory itself. Someone once carved on this very wall. Maritimus was here. Paid 2 asses crude, petty, but more honest than any Senate speech. In another corner, a rusted bronze amulet still hangs, shaped like a phallus. Its owner is long gone, but the object remains, silent, a witness. It tells no story with words, but its mere existence says, someone once believed in luck. Someone once believed that a small charm could hold back the dark. And then, the tax receipts. Wax tablets where your name was etched, not to honor you, but to ease the empire's accounting. No place in a family tree. No name chiseled into a marble grave. But there you are, recorded in tax ledgers. And bitter irony, those cold wax entries may outlast the statues of emperors. That's the final dark humor. Rome built a grand system of history to glorify emperors, generals, and philosophers. But thousands of years later, the things that make modern people smirk, blush, and nod in recognition aren't Cicero's speeches. They're the graffiti scratched into a brothel wall. A wall speaks more truth than 100 pages of state history. And this isn't unique to Rome. In Egypt, the chiseled lines on a slave's tomb say more than entire books on pharaohs. In China, the dorm walls of courtesans hold names, debts, small etched hopes, more honest than a magistrate's stone stele. In Japan, the Hanamachi left scrolls, petty ledgers of expenses and names, a shadow archive of real lives. And in medieval Europe, the brothels kept tax books, cold, precise, yet stubborn in their memory. Who worked, who paid, who existed. You place your hand on a worn carving, rough, cold, but alive. And you think, maybe this body will be gone one day, but these lines will remain. The Senate will never speak your name, but the wall whispers it nightly. And maybe, just maybe, the wall is the only honest historian Rome ever had. It does not praise, it does not judge, it only remembers. Here lies the human paradox. Official history tried to erase you, but unofficial memory has made you immortal. They could carve Gator's face off a statue, they could strike names from royal records, but no one ever erased the graffiti. It survived volcanic ash, rain, wind, and centuries of scorn. And in that moment you realize the true memory of Rome is not carved in marble tablets. It is scribbled on dirty walls, not in polished speeches, but in a single line. Julia loves Iris, not in noble family trees, but in an old tax record. You exhale, lean your back against the stone. Out there, Rome still roars, with war, with politics, with festivals for its gods. But in this quiet room, a fading scratch on the wall whispers a different story. The story of those Rome forgot, but who still echo through stone. You sit in the dark room, your back against the wall, stained with graffiti. Names scrawled by forgotten hands, a swaying bronze charm, cold tax records. They all seem to whisper around you. And in this silence, a thought rises slowly. To survive an entire lifetime is its own great achievement. Rome will build statues of Caesar, etch the name of Augustus, sing praises to Livia. They have monuments, historians, echoes across marble forums. And you? You have no statue, only a carved line on a crumbling wall, a vulgar scribble, a rusted charm. And yet, thousands of years later, those are the things that still speak. More alive than any Senate speech. It's a bitter, beautiful comparison. Caesar has a monument, you have graffiti. But monuments crumble, get toppled, get ground down into lime and plaster. Graffiti, dismissed by Rome as childish, dirty, endures. It slips through volcanic ash, weather, time itself. A vulgar scratch on a wall may outlive an empire. You think of your life, no conquests, no power, no lineage, just day after day, waking in a damp cellar, standing outside calling to clients, enduring aches, enduring false promises, but that endless string of days, unbroken, unbeaten, has become a legacy uncelebrated, yet still real. Here's the final dark humor. If history is a grand banquet, you are just the crumbs under the table. No one notices, no one gathers them, but it is those crumbs that give the banquet its real flavor. A feast without crumbs is too clean, too false, and a history made only of statues and speeches is too polished, too empty. It's you and those like you who give history the taste of real life. Across cultures, this is always true. In Egypt, we remember pharaohs, but pottery shards still bear the names of their workers. In China, history books recall emperors, but folk songs remember the courtesans. In Japan, there are more preserved shunga than samurai portraits. And in Europe, the diary of an unknown girl can reveal more than 100 pages of official chronicle. Real history doesn't only live in stone monuments, it lives in fragments, in traces, in memory's dust. You smile, slowly. Rome may see you as shameful. The Senate may laugh. Clients may forget your name as they button their cloaks, but you survived. And that's something even the powerful don't always manage. They fall in plots, they die in disgrace. You're still here. Night after night. Pain after pain. Still breathing. And in a world built on hypocrisy, sometimes survival is greater than glory. You exhale, not bitter now, but steady. Because now you understand. Human memory doesn't distinguish between graffiti and marble. They all whisper to us in dreams. As you close your eyes, you hear the chorus of it all, the clang of hammers, the cries of vendors, the half-laughs in the brothel, the soft sighs of women beside you, all of it blending into the background music of history. And in that music, you are not the main melody, not the loud refrain. You are just a quiet note, a distant harmony, but it is those quiet notes that make the song whole. You close your eyes. Rome rumbles on outside. The Senate still debates. The legions still march. The wine still flows. But deep down, you know this truth. When time washes everything away, when the statues fall and the scrolls decay, it is the graffiti, the charms, the tax ledgers, and your survival that will remain. This is your legacy, not radiant, not triumphant, but enduring. And in that you have won history on your own terms. And so, our quiet journey through the shadows of Rome comes to an end. You've seen how survival itself became a legacy. Emperors had monuments, but the women of the brothel had graffiti, charms, and curse tablets that whispered across time. If history is a banquet, they were the crumbs under the table, but those crumbs held the truest taste of daily life. Forgotten by official chronicles, yet remembered by scratched words on plaster, their endurance is what lingers. Thank you for spending this slow, calm evening with the Sleepy Historian on Historian Sleepy 365. This is boring history for sleep, meant to soothe your mind as the night grows quiet. Close your eyes now. Let the noise of Rome fade away until only your own breath remains. History will still be here tomorrow, but tonight let it guide you gently into rest.